Okay, hello. Today is the 30th of May, 2022, and we'll talk about an important architect and engineer who also received the Pritzker Prize in Architecture just shortly before he died in 2015. So Frei Paul Otto was born on the 31st of May. 31st? This is strange. On my list, I had him on the 30th. Maybe because tomorrow there are other two architects. But anyway, I anticipate a little bit. So he was born on the 31st, not on the 30th. 31st of May, 1925. So we'll be the first ones to wish him happy birthday. Was a German architect and structural engineer, noted for his use of lightweight structures, in particular tensile and membrane structures, including the roof of the Olympic Stadium in Munich for the 1972 Summer Olympics. Otto won the Riva Royal Gold Medal in 2006 and was awarded the Pritzker Architecture Prize in 2015, shortly before his death. So he was born on the 31st of May, 1925. So on the same day with Levi Yasuz and Zvi Hecker, about whom I will talk tomorrow. This was the man, rather handsome, even in his older age, with an abundant hair, something I cannot claim, unfortunately. Anyway, beautiful white immaculate shirt, a romantic engineer, so to speak. Here he is in a strange position. You'd almost say he's some kind of disc jockey, you know, manipulating the music machine, but he's not. He's, I don't know, working on some model of his inventions. Some drawings by Frei Otto. I will improvise some reactions to what I see, and you know, as such, maybe my reactions might not be the most profound, but they might be sincere and sometimes maybe even refreshingly other, so to speak. So if I look at this, you know, what do I see? Well, I see a quest for that difficult balance between order and disorder, because we see here, you know, we see kind of a coherent structure, even, I mean, curved, but still coherently done. And then I don't know what are these, but these are insinuations of the uncontrolled, the aleatory, and so on. And we see also on the left, this is rather common sometimes. You know, it's the distortion of a rather predictable structure because of, I guess, mathematically, you can provoke this, you know, accidental deformation through, you know, you introduce, if you work with algorithms, I don't know exactly how he worked, but those who know about this probably is not critical for them to understand how you can provoke an accident within a structure which is otherwise, you know, coherent. That it is circular or rectangular, this is not really the point. In essence, from what I know about his work, is that he tried to infuse movement, a dynamic quality, and even an unpredictability into a structure that was, you know, still, you know, based on calculations and numbers and so on. In essence, kind of like Yanis Xenakis did in a different way, trying to bring order, now to bring disorder or freedom into an, you know, order system. And we kind of see here the same thing. Is the musicality of a web almost mimicking the web of a spider's web, he was obsessed by lightness, and he did miraculous things. I mean, physically, you know, it's easy for me to talk. Here, he didn't talk. He made them. He built them. And I like this very much, you know, the ability to bring into physicality, you know, the ephemeral, the free, the disordered, the unpredictable, and even sometimes the metaphysical. Procedura Frei Otto. He had Otto. He had a system which was not linear, which was not rigid, and that system allowed him these sort of things, which can be found in nature, but much more rarely in the work of man. And he was a force in this respect. Procedural modeling tool, Frei Otto attractor. You know, what I love about these creators, that is Yanis Xenakis or that it is Frei Otto, is the courage to investigate. It's really like a pioneering work. This is what carried them through their lives, this passion for discovering new things. You know, they would not have been happy to use, you know, learned procedures. He had to attract, to, you know, refer to a word that he used here, to attract new possibilities. And I think this is the role of the creator, to bring the new forward, to discover new territories, with all the risks and falling often, you know, making mistakes. It's okay. You know, I don't know, when I made this presentation, I don't think this is actually from his work, or maybe it is, but I like this image very much because, you know, here you see something that, I'm sorry, the T-square and the rectangle cannot even dream of doing, but is part of life and is part of nature. And this elastic, you know, I cannot call it configuration, the elasticity of a membrane that is adapting itself to the, you know, to the unpredictable movement of a hand, of a human hand. And it's the textile aspect, and it's the liquidity of the effort that the membrane makes in order to remain one or together when it is challenged by a force within that is risking to explode it, to disturb it, to destroy it. Yeah, and I don't know. I think this kind of research is totally missing in our schools, and this is very, very sad. Because we find refuge behind dogma, but dogma is against creativity. And anyway, here again, it's a reference to nature, that it is, you know, vegetal nature, or, you know, organic nature within, you know, an animal or a human body. It's really about nature. And nature was always inspiring architects. In fact, Frank Lloyd Wright said, you know, always study nature. It will never betray you. It will never let you down. And yeah, it's a little difficult to do it in the midst of urban life, but not only the external nature, but also the internal nature, because what we see here is actually an internal nature. Now, what do we see around this figure? We see the complexity of a digital technology that some people think destroyed architecture. In my opinion, it didn't. It could serve architecture in the right hands. And I think the more we know this technology, the better. That's why if I ran a school of architecture, I would ask the students to study it from the first day of school, not postpone one single hour. from the first day of school, study the technology of your time, and I'm far from being a technocrat. Start studying the technology of your time as intensely as possible. 16 hours a day, like in Vienna. That's how you learn a language, if it is German or Arabic. That's how you learn the digital language, by studying it very carefully and very intensely and with a lot of perseverance. But unfortunately, this is not practiced. In our schools, we postpone and postpone and postpone, and we find glory in using SketchUp in the 6th year. It's not enough. Anyway, I guess we are not too ambitious, and that's a problem. I said it before, and I will say it again. I have the CV of a young Japanese architect from some years ago, maybe 5-7 years ago. And if you look on his CV and you look at skills, there are I don't know, I didn't count them, but around 20-25 softwares that astonished me when I saw them, because they at least half of them I never heard of, you know. And it's true, I'm not one of the most knowledgeable about these technologies, but I admire very much the people who you know, push the frontiers, who study the newest in softwares, in digital technologies, in digital procedures. You have to, because it belongs to your time. And it's known, if you are to study a language, any language, the sooner you learn it and the more you practice it, the better. That's how you learn a language. Any parent knows it. If a parent wants a child to know, let's say, German, well, that child will be, you know, asked to study German, you know, when he or she is 3 years old or 4 years old or something like this. That's how you learn a language. And with the digital language is the same thing. The sooner you learn it, the better. And the more you practice it, the better. What do we see here? We see again drawings that seem to be kind of, well, they are not undecided. They are schematic configurations, structural configurations that are based on order, but that also on the, you know, you look here, you know, there are deformations, there are deviations from strict Cartesian rules, and the roundness of the thinking behind them shows the complexity of the procedures that Frei Otto tried to arrive at. Look here, occupying and connecting, thoughts on territories as spheres of influence with particular reference to human settlement. Well, the drawing is rather abstract, but if you read this text and look again at the drawing, you might even see a human settlement, so to speak. But it's interesting that he tries to bring, you know, organic attributes to something that usually is considered almost exclusively in terms of rectangularity. This is problematic. That's why many of our cities are so banal, because they don't, you know, as opposed to the medieval cities, they simply don't assume, you know, the roundness. They don't assume the spiral. They don't assume anything organic. So, you know, they are strict. You know, there are parallel lines and the 90 degrees angles. Here we don't see too many 90 degrees angles, do we? Anyway, he was also a theoretician, of course, like any great creator in architecture, has also theoretical interests, preoccupations, and you can see it here. Frei Otto, occupying and connecting. Connecting, it's very, very important to connect the joint, the adoration of the joint. Vincent Scully, who wrote, well, he was also a friend of Louis Kahn, and I read an essay by him about Louis Kahn, and he used the motto from a British writer, Froster, which only had 2 words, only connect. Yes, it's immensely important for art and for life to connect, but it's not easy because of the strange mechanisms of society and mistrust of people and egocentrism and so on. In order to connect, you need to open up towards another, whatever that other might be. Thou and I. It's not easy. You know, the nostalgic poet might say, you need love, because love connects, brings things together. Love of a profession, love of another person. Indeed, love connects. But what is important to reflect on, I think, is that it is not the brain that connects, but the heart. The brain is very good at analysis. It analyzes, but the synthesis is not done by the brain, or not by the brain alone. And that's why, you know, for example, you know very well, those of you who are here, that the word analysis is used continuously, but not the word synthesis. Everybody talks about analysis, but almost no one about synthesis. But what is connecting if not synthesis? Anyway, terrain vague, network, cities, and trees. I love these words. I mean, just the words, terrain vague. You know, terrain vague. I feel like repeating it over and over again. Terrain vague. And the trees are mentioned there. Network, cities, and trees. Not network, cities, and garages. Not network, cities, and parking lots. But network, cities, and trees. I don't know, I took these pages, I guess, from a book he published. Again, we see this constellation of various polygons, and we see dots, and we see lines connecting the dots. This was a man, like any true creator, searching for the essential mechanism of generating life. Because this is what you are supposed to do, to generate life. A good building generates life, is life itself. So we have centrifugal forces, we have centripetal forces, we have, you see, it's nothing really rigid here, you know. There is the aleatory part of life is present in the way he connected these dots here. And I think this is very important in general, but for our time, maybe even more. What do we see here? You know, we see, I guess, some kind of a medieval city here, or if not medieval, an older city, of course, because now contemporary urbanism, you know, which is and is, would indulge in something like this, which is organic, this kind of tissue, this kind of you know, urban fabric that developed in time, and it's organic and it has irregularities. And here we see, I don't know, this could be the tissue of a biological tissue, you know, the connecting of cells within a body, an organic, you know, I guess it could be in the human, I don't know, even skin. We don't inspire ourselves, and this makes me mad, actually, that when I look here, I see life. And this life is within us, is on us, and is outside of us, and it's also in cosmos. But instead, because of the T-square and the rectangle, we only work with rectangularities, which we know cannot be found in nature. Of course, some good architecture was built with the T-square and the rectangle. That's true, and probably still could, probably. But the richness of life and the richness of nature and the richness of the possibilities we have, technological and otherwise, should allow us to explore other ways of doing architecture and even being in the world. I like this, this multiplicity within unity. It's really about the text, which is the etymological root of any derivative word having to do with architecture. Text, T-E-K-S, which in the Proto-Indo-European language meant to weave. To weave. This is actually bioarchitecture. This is what we are looking at here. And unfortunately, again, very rarely I see bioarchitecture in the works of certain schools of architecture. Let me put it in a more diplomatic way. And interestingly, the naive world of the Middle Ages, so to speak, were closer and are closer to some of the newest researches, based on very sophisticated technology, which explore the spontaneous order. Because in science, I was told these two words mean something, spontaneous order. How do you create spontaneous order? In other words, as opposed to the rigid Cartesian order, you bring in a so-called spontaneous order. Look here, no polygon repeats itself twice. They are all a little bit different. They all belong kind of to the same family, but they are all also a little bit different, and they accommodate each other to the others. And is this organic quality? Obviously, this man, this architect, this engineer was questing for what is life and alive. He was not happy with the dogmatic, rigid, crystallization of convenient mimicking of life. Now, Frei Otto presents in Occupying and Connecting, we saw a few pages, a theory about the phenomena of urban networks as self-organized systems, surfaces and paths, occupations, and territories expansion. All these spontaneous structures grow through two basic processes that organize all natural and humanized spaces. He used these words, occupation and connection, governed by laws of attraction, repulsion, or expansion, contraction. They present emergence and self-organizational behavior akin to physical processes in natural patterns. This is kind of what I tried to say before. Top projects by seven top projects by the 2015 Pritzker Prize laureate Frei Otto. He was, I think, ill, very close to dying when he received the Pritzker. Now we begin with his most famous work, probably, the roof for the 1972 Munich Olympic Stadium, designed in collaboration with Günther Benisch. The roofing for the 1972 Munich Olympic Stadium was considered the pioneer in lightweight tensile and membrane construction. The cloud-like and innovative structure was a striking departure from the harsh and authoritarian appearance of previous roofing structures and helped present a new, lighter face of Germany to the world. Covered in acrylic glass panels, the suspended membrane delicately floats above the stadium and maintains views out towards the surrounding landscape. Delicately, this is indeed a very gentle word. And I would ask myself, and I would ask others, how many of our structures delicately flow? Not many. But anyway, he had the rigor of an engineer and the poetry disposition, the poetical disposition of a good architect. And here you have the meeting between the engineer and the architect in the same person. Well, he didn't work alone, but he was quite capable of operating in both fields. Again, it's about, I think, building for human life, for the humans, but in a way which would not insult nature. And this is not easy to do. He did it. Frei Otto did it. You know, I mean, a stadium could very well be a prosaic structure, yes, of considerable dimensions, and to bring in the word delicate or delicately when you operate within the field of a large stadium, this is not common. But he did it. You know, he just stopped before. I mean, he built it in such a way that it is functional, but it's lightweight. It's almost discreet. It's interesting though visually, and it works. And this is based on his research, on his continuous work, pushing the frontiers of both structural engineering and architecture. Because the truth is, you know, what is an architect? Well, Frank Lloyd Wright put it right. An architect that is a great architect is a great poet. He doesn't necessarily write poetry with words, but he writes poetry with materials, with wood, glass, stone, metal, whatever, but expresses a poetical feeling and a poetical thought. And you know, but sorry, here the language is I do not know. I guess it's Spanish. Anyway, I improvise some opinions when I look at these images, just like you do. Someone more rigorous than me and trained in engineering probably would say more valuable things. I regret Bruce Denzinger is not here. He most surely would have said some important things. I should have invited him, but I didn't think of it until now. But even if we look at these graphic representations of what we did, what do we see? Well, we see what we see when we contemplate the web of a spider, or the, you know, anything that animals do, or insects, or bees, or there is a mysterious order in nature, which science calls it now spontaneous order. And I think Frei Otto was also searching for something similar. If I am to use the word of Boileau, I would say there is l'esprit de géométrie and l'esprit de finesse. Because there is geometry here, but it's not a rigid geometry. You know, so there is the spirit of geometry, but there is also the spirit of fineness, which brings in a small, you know, accidents or small deformations, small deviations from the strict, repetitive, dogmatic rules. In essence, it's about asserting freedom without falling into, you know, chaos. It's some kind of a balance between order and disorder. And by the way of this, I have to tell you, I met a mathematician in the United States. Abraham was his name. I forgot his, Ralph, I think, Ralph Abraham, a mathematician from California, but I met him on the eastern coast of the United States in Eastern New York, and he invented a word. This word was dyschaos. Now, everybody knows there is order and there is disorder. And then we know there is the word chaos. But apparently until him, no one thought of the word dyschaos. Now, what is dyschaos? It's order, but a different kind of order than the first one means. In other words, we have order, and we, not in other words, in the same words, but I repeat myself. We have order and we have disorder. It's opposite. Then we have chaos, but we don't have you say the opposite of chaos is order. Now, he says that the opposite of chaos is not order, is this chaos. What would that this chaos be? I suggest to you, the students who are here, to attempt to do a house or a building that is this chaotic. Not chaotic, but this chaotic. How would you do it? It was great. I mean, you know, again, I throw words here in a more inspired or less inspired way, but this man built with measurable entities, with materials, built and created something that was made by man, was calculated, was measured, but also had the fragility and the gentleness, that, you know, the delicate aspect of you know, the grace. Even these are graceful structures. That's why I used the word, I recall them, I recall them quite often, these words by Boileau: l'esprit de géométrie and l'esprit de finesse. If you can combine geometry with fineness or with grace, it's like combining will or willfulness with gracefulness. It's not easy. Now look how strong these things are, because they seem to be thin and light and so on, fragile in other words. But this man, you know, probably very vigorous man, you know, they're all on top of this structure, you know, and probably many others would have been, you know, supported by this. Frei Otto. You know, to put it simply, any great creator in any field searches for freedom. And maybe I put it simplistically, but that's kind of the truth. Now, the roof for the Multihalle, the multi-purpose hall in Mannheim, in Germany, completed in 1975 over the course of 5 years. The Multihalle is topped by a double curvature wooden grid shell structure designed by Frei Otto, Carlfried Mutzler, and Joachim Langner. The large span grid shell was made for a horticultural exhibition in Mannheim, in Germany, and covers an area of nearly 9,500 square meters, listed as a historical cultural monument since 1998. This timber lattice self-supporting roof structure allows diffused light into the building and creates a sense of weightlessness inside. Well, what is this sense or feeling of weightlessness? It's actually about freedom, or the illusion even of freedom. But it's important that that illusion. Yeah. And just like in the case of the music by Yannis Xenakis, who worked with numbers and sounds, here he works with numbers, trying to achieve a structure which is not rigid, although it's based on some kind of a system, but an organic system. That's why I would say his structures are biostructures. His architecture is a bioarchitecture. And look at it, you know, it's coherent. It is a coherent system, but it's not rigid. He arrived at some kind of a, you know, I don't know how to call it, you know, the mystery of generating a structure as if God made, when in fact it was man-made. This is what you get when you break the box of you know, simplistic Cartesian thinking, and you see the coordinates here are allowing for fluidity, and that fluidity, I mean, look at it, it's beautiful, you know. It's just like in the polytope or polytopes of Yannis Xenakis, and in music the same, you know. Music is based on numbers, the notations, on the musical score, but you search to evoke through sounds life itself. Here the same thing, you know, the organic world enters the world of man. And look at the span, it's huge. It's huge, and it's so gracefully done. And it's gracefully done because the man was great as an architect and as an engineer. That's why. What amazes me is that actually this, what seems to be very freely done, is actually based on calculation and very rigorous calculation. And which means calculation, if it's not an end in itself, could be a means towards achieving freedom. I'm sure he was inspired by nature. After all, we saw the title of that that I read earlier, you know, network, cities, and trees. Trees, yes, the beautiful trees. The beautiful trees we cut down. I mean, look at this. This is almost like a divine Frei Otto work, and like a divine Alexander Calder sculpture. It's beautiful. It's all there. You know, all the mysteries of the world are in the tree and in the flowers and in the grass and in everything that nature made. It's very beautiful. To be honest with you, it's more beautiful than even the building by Frei Otto. But it's hard to compete with the author of these magnificent trees. I mean, you know. But we attempt. It's important, the attempt. To build in such a way that we do not insult nature. Ideally, we should build in such a way that the trees would smile, the trees nearby, and would murmur, thank you, Frei Otto, thank you, Francesca Coman, thank you, Alexandru. Yeah, we need to work. We need to work. But we also need to love. You can't work without love. You know, I'm not so sure. I'm not totally, you know, seduced by this building. I like it very much from the inside, but from the outside, I prefer what the world of nature offers. But you know, look, what's here? It's very beautiful. The covering, the vaulting, the roofing. It's very beautiful because it has the unexpected incorporated into the structure, just like in the Brussels pavilion by Xenakis and Le Corbusier. Now, the International and Universal Exposition in Montreal in Canada, 1967, the Expo 67 West German Pavilion roof was a competition-winning tensile membrane design that took Otto and collaborator Rolf Gutbrod several years to develop. Thanks to careful design and the form-finding structural engineering principle called dynamic relaxation. I love these words, dynamic relaxation, you know, because relaxation could very well become placid and static. But to have a dynamic relaxation, this is conjunctio oppositorum. This is what all great alchemists search for, to unite the opposites, a dynamic relaxation. The structure took only 6 weeks to construct, and upon completion was the first tent ever used as an exhibition building at a world exhibition. The roof comprises a steel wire net fastened to 8 slender steel masts that was then covered by a translucent plastic skin. Let's not forget, they worked for several years researching this. So it's not what appears to be easygoing, and you know, it's actually at the end of a significant amount of time dedicated to you know, study and so on. The pivotal turning point in the late Frei Otto's career, kept by last month, was written in 2015, Pritzker announcement came nearly 50 years ago at the Expo 67 World's Fair in Montreal, Quebec. In collaboration with architect Rolf Gutbrod, I read this, but not about this, but this is a different text. Otto was responsible for the exhibition pavilion of the Federal Republic of Germany. At that time, Germany was divided in two, as you know, a tensile canopy structure that brought his experiments in lightweight architecture to the international stage for the first time. Together with Fuller's biosphere and Moshe Safdie's Habitat 67, the German pavilion was part of the Expo's late modern demonstration of the potential of technology, prefabrication, and mass production to generate a new humanitarian direction for architecture. This remarkable collection at the Expo was both the zenith of modern meliorism and its tragic swan song. Never since has the world seen such a singularly hopeful display of innovative architecture. Well, an exalted text. But if there is some truth in what this man wrote, the question would arise, what happened after 1967? Let's remember, at the end of the 60s, there was indeed a different spirit in the world, the hippie movement, the rock and roll, with Jimi Hendrix and the Woodstock great festival and so on. The young fighting against war and against money and against banks and promoting love and togetherness and so on. It was like a spring in human life. And architecture, I guess, well, it's true that it didn't last for too long either, because unfortunately, it seems what is really good doesn't last for long. But maybe we can start again. It's important on the spiral of time to start again. He was a dreamer, of course. He tried to reduce to a minimum, the structural elements and to have the structure stand, but not aggressively, delicately. It's not easy to do this. What this person irritates. So, yeah. So this is in Montreal. I should have had also pictures of Buckminster Fuller's biosphere and the Habitat by Moshe Safdie. Look at this. This is beautiful. It's like an artwork. It's like an incredibly lyrical graphic work, and it's not. It's a structure, but it's so indeed delicate and nuanced and gentle, and yet strong enough to support this covering above a large space. This is poetry. That's what it is. It's when engineering becomes poetry. Japan Paper Pavilion, Expo 2000 in Hanover, Germany. Frei Otto designed the Japan Pavilion for Expo 2000 in collaboration with Shigeru Ban, the 2014 laureate of the Pritzker Architecture Prize. So Shigeru Ban got it in 2014 and Frei Otto 1 year later. Constructed entirely from paper, the grid shell pavilion is made up of recyclable paper tubes without joints. The airy tunnel arch measures 73 meters long and 25 meters wide. Honeycomb boards were used as partitions in the interior. Here it is. Well, we recognize a little bit Shigeru Ban here. Well, at that time, Frei Otto was older and very close to saying goodbye to us. I see here actually more Shigeru Ban than Frei Otto, but they collaborated for this work. There is, of course, a certain elegance, and we know the trick. I almost used the trick. I used the word not very gently, and I apologize. But this is a trademark. Is the signature material for Shigeru Ban. paper tubes. He does indeed, become an acrobat in using this material. I still think in this structure, just like in the previous one that we saw, the interior is more impressive than the exterior. The exterior is opaque. The interior is not, because light goes through. I don't know. I mean, if I was the architect, I would have struggled to bring something of the spirit of the interior towards the outside. Although here, the spirit of the interior is also not so nuanced and complex and lyrical as we saw a few slides before. But that's because that's how Shigeru Ban works. Shigeru Ban, I think his most important work is the one done for humanitarian causes. In that field, he is a great master, and he did some beautiful things, even aesthetically. Here, this is an elongating so to speak, a techno uterus, if I am to call it so. It's okay, but I like more the work that Frei Otto did by himself without Shigeru Ban. Here, maybe the tour de force is the usage of paper tubes or whatever. I guess paper tubes. I mean, it is, of course, it is miraculous in a way, but only when you consider the material he used. And I like this picture very much, and you see the scale is huge. Those human beings there. Truly, these human beings, imperfect as they are, and ferocious as they are sometimes, if we consider the assault on Ukraine, can also do beautiful things and miraculous things. And this is another example, that the ones who know they do not know, that is the human beings, as opposed to those who know they know, the gods, and those who do not know, they do not know, the animals. These fragile human beings in the valley, in the crepuscular valley, meaning they who know they do not know, sometimes do beautiful things. And this picture inspires me to remember this thought of Paul Klee, because I quoted from him. I love very much this thought of Paul Klee, who said that there are two mountains: the mountain of the animals, they who do not know, they do not know, and the mountain of the gods, they who know, they know. And between these two mountains is the crepuscular valley of man, they who know, they do not know. But they who know, who do not know, create art, create mathematics, create sometimes beautiful things. Unfortunately, they also create words of so-called denazification. Diplomatic Club Heart tent in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. It's a tent. He loves tent, and I understand why, because they had to do with textiles. Completed in 1980, the Diplomatic Club Heart tent serves as the centerpiece to the interior garden of Riyadh's diplomatic quarter. So these are not, banal tents. They are for diplomats. The beautiful canopy is made from 2,028 millimeter thick tiles of stained glass painted with colorful and traditional patterns created by Bettina Otto, his own daughter, Frei Otto's daughter. The canopy helps protect visitors from the powerful sun and is made from cable net construction. And here it is. The picture is not so good. Well, here we have images from the outside. When was this done? In 1980s. Okay, so he was not so old at that time. I still think in some cases, these structures look more interesting from underneath them, from the inside, than from the outside. I don't know though who did this, what is behind, which are not the tents. These are interesting too, and I don't know who did them. Was he the architect? I do not know. But they're interesting in a way. Anyway, is this, sinuous conjunction of lightweight tensile structures and then the brick wall that is curved? Obviously, this is a place of privilege, no? Is the diplomat's quarters in an affluent country, a rich country. It's a citadel which has extensions of gentleness, delicate extensions, so to speak. Although, again, they are delicate because they are thin, lightweight, and from underneath the light goes through, you can see it, you can feel it. But from the outside, I don't know, for my taste, I think if God was the author here, he would have maybe added some color, kind of like on the wings of the butterflies, maybe some hippie colors, maybe some psychedelic colors, or some kind of ornamentation. Like this, they are kind of blank towards the outside, in my opinion. The Munich Zoo Aviary, in collaboration with Georg Griebel and Ted Habold, Frei Otto designed a large aviary for the Munich Hellabrunn, the world's first geo-zoo located in Munich. The innovative and thin stainless steel mesh canopy creates a cage-free-like environment. Let's read this again, a cage-free-like environment for the animals. I hope it's not just an illusion. The site covers an area of 5,000 square meters with a height of 18 meters. Now, or if it is an illusion, and it is an illusion, it's a beautiful illusion. Now, what is here in this picture? Is this man actually working on the structure? It's like he is in the clouds, working on clouds. It's unbelievable. Is it not? I think it's very beautiful. Yeah, it's still a cage in a way, but you cannot get it more discreet and more lyrical and more almost non-existent than this one. And also the fact that it's not it's not centripetal, and it's not based on some kind of a centralized configuration, makes it even more appealing, in my opinion. I think this is kind of the summum of his research. Yes, it has technology, yes, it has structural forces, but this is a skin as light as it could get, and it's I think it's very poetical. But it does bother me, if I am too honest with you, is that the genius of this structure is used actually in order to trap plants and trees inside the space. And I'm not sure we need to do that any longer, really. I mean, why are we doing this? If God would have liked these trees and plants to be so-called protected in this way, he probably would have been able to provide something in this sense. But no, God chose not to. And why do we come with this cap, with this at this point, I think we should avoid trapping more nature, animals and vegetal nature in this way. I think quite the opposite. I think we should open the gates of zoos and of, all kinds of other buildings we built in order to show the supremacy of man. We have enough information about plants, animals, and so on. We study them. We have films. We have everything. Let's open the gates of zoos. And let's open any cage, including the inner cage of human beings, and then free the spirit within. Unfortunately, human beings like cages. They like prisons. They build prisons for so-called the malevolent ones, and then we build cages for birds, and we build zoos for animals. Why? Because we want to be in control. We love to control. I mean, this bird is still trapped here if the bird is indeed inside. Yes, the shape is beautiful, but the bird is trapped inside. And doesn't matter how elegant the structure, and it is elegant, in essence, it's still a cage. A beautiful cage, but a cage. My spirit would suffocate here. It doesn't matter how beautiful this is. And I think this was also a problem with the biospheres or the geodesic domes that Buckminster Fuller proposed and built. Not to speak about his megalomaniacal project for Manhattan, where he wanted to cover half of Manhattan with a cupola, for so-called having, protecting Manhattan, the elements. Why should we protect ourselves from the rain, from the snow? Well, now there isn't much snow, but I think we have to attempt something else. Otherwise, yeah, it's you look at the trees and you look at the structure that Frei Otto built, and you have the feeling that Frei Otto was very sensitive to nature and was modeling his work according to principles that he noticed in nature. But at the end of the day, what I see here is still some kind of a oppressive, yes, lightweight, but still an oppressive controlling from above. And for me, this is a little bit problematic, especially at this time. But it's beautifully done. It's beautifully crafted, and but it's still a separation. It's a separation. It's not a uniting here. It's a separation. What is underneath is separated from what is outside. The city in the Arctic proposal. This is another thing kind of done in the same spirit. City in the Arctic was Otto's visionary proposal to house 40,000 residents within an air-supported city dome in Antarctica, created with engineers at Arup in 1971. And we know that we had our friend Mahadev Raman, who was the director of Arup Engineers America for 15 years. Yeah, I should have invited him and Bruce Danziger. It didn't cross my mind. I didn't even announce them about the birthday of Frei Otto. Anyway, the pneumatic dome stretches 2 kilometers across and would be built on an, I don't know if it was built on an estuary for easy access to shipping routes. A nuclear power station would provide heat and energy to the dome and would help keep the harbor ice free. Now we need the ice, actually. The proposed canopy would be constructed from a translucent skin attached by a grid of high-strength polyester fiber cables. To be honest with you, I'm not very impressed in the good sense of the word about this. This also reminds me of the covering of the Louvre Museum by Jean Nouvel. It's, in my opinion, it shows a human being who is not like the human being in that saying by Paul Klee, who knows who doesn't know. I'm of the impression that this is actually done by a human being who thinks that he knows, not that he doesn't know. And I personally, subjectively, I'm a little bit against this assuming position for Homo sapiens. Doesn't matter how. Also, look, gone is the organicity of some of his previous structures, just like in the Louvre, roofing of Jean Nouvel for the Louvre there. Here also this, and unlike the large work proposed by Buckminster Fuller for Manhattan, it's a circular, perfectly round. It's a circle. No, it's a circular structure of huge dimensions, which caps, which covers, which tops a human settlement. But look at the human settlement. The human settlement is organic, is you know, even a little bit chaotic, is a little bit medieval, is a little bit, it's freer than what it caps it, than what covers it from above. And I'm very surprised actually that Frei Otto forgot his earlier works, theoretical and built. You know, something of what is underneath this covering, huge covering, should have been assumed also by the structure itself, and is not. The structure is rather authoritarian, even if it's lightweight. But it's you know, it's a perfect circle, and it's a centralized structure, and it's the structure of authority against that beautiful spontaneity which spontaneous order advocates in nature. So Frei Otto's proposal to house 40,000 people under a 2-kilometer dome, it's a dome. It's sad actually that this is an involution, in my opinion, because his early works were much more subtle. You know, he didn't work with centralized domes like here. So it's a 2 kilometers. Can you imagine 2 kilometers dome in the Arctic Circle reflected the zeitgeist of the 1970s, a concern about the ecological future combined with the promise of a better tomorrow. But I'm sorry to say it, I see it more like a reflection of a human being a little bit too sure of himself and too concerned with himself, because I think the world doesn't belong only to humans. You know, we are only concerned about us. You know, me, and me again. It's something egocentric here. You know, the beginning of the 1970s, I think for us now, we should be more concerned about the icebergs, which are melting, than about the well-being of 40,000 people under a dome 2 kilometers wide. The beginning of the 1970s was a heady time for architecture. The oil and energy crisis were still to hit. Yes, of course, at that time they were not hit yet, so they believed in the limitless power of the human beings. Postmodernism was still a marginal heresy practiced by cranks, and despite maybe a sense of boredom at the same old concrete, the tide was yet to fully turn against state architecture. The overwhelming impression was one of accelerating development. Yes, it was an impression. Humans were on the moon, new technologies such as computing and new materials such as plastics were forging ahead, and desire for social change was bubbling over. I wish we have similar desires and concerns now as well. There was every reason to think that this new movement, in which governments planned and built entire new cities for thousands of people, would continue and progress. The Arctic city would be seated on an estuary with a harbor for shipping access and an airport on the outskirts. The city would be built, but it was not built, and it might not be built in tandem with a nuclear power station, which would provide energy. We are obsessed by energy, but we cannot be sustainable with this obsession for energy. We can't. As well as heating the air for the city and the water of the harbor to keep it perpetually ice-free. Why should we keep it ice-free? You know, I mean, very soon ice would be a very expensive commodity, hard to find unless we go to our refrigerators. But then the refrigerators might enter into a crisis also, because they consume energy and they even pollute, don't they? The first stage of construction was to prepare the site by digging a set of external foundations in a 2-kilometer wide ring. Then a grid of cables formed from a newly developed high-strength polyester fiber rather than steel would be laid across the site and fixed together. The double-layered translucent pillows that would create the skin would then be attached before the entire dome. I hate the fact that he used a dome. Was inflated to a height of 2 meters 240 meters at its peak. By not building from steel, the roof could behave as a skin rather than a true dome, meaning that it would be less susceptible to wind, snow, and changing loads. Once the dome was inflated and the internal pressure was at the correct balance, the city inside could be built. There would be 4 main entrances, Cardon Decumanus, and exits, the return of the Cartesian thinking, and they would connect to the various external facilities. And of course, the industrial area, which would be the city's main purpose. Let's read this again, because I hate this. And the industrial area, which would be the city's main purpose. That is, attacking nature for production, 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 consumption, consumption, consumption. Why it should be the main purpose of a city, the industrial area? A submerged ring road in the dome would connect the housing for a maximum of 40,000 people with the central administration, central, let's be careful here again, central area and the recreation district, while pathways and moving sidewalks at ground level would lead between the various functions. I don't like it. I don't like it. I like, but I also cry, these melting icebergs here, these fragments of an iceberg. I like the poor animal who looks astonished at this giant techno dome, but the happiness, the happy-go-lucky look here in the back, in the background, the fumes of the assault of man on nature, the nuclear power plant or whatever, it's this progressivism for more consumption, more energy, more well-to-do. But look at these human beings. I'm very sorry. I would prefer to live in Sighișoara, which doesn't have this doomed dome above it. I wouldn't like it. And I wouldn't like it also in Manhattan if Buckminster Fuller went ahead and built his, I would say, less poetical and less inspiring. This is what happens when the human beings do not understand the power of limits, when they do not understand that there are intrinsic, sometimes extrinsic, if there is such a word, external limits that we must acknowledge and respect. We go too far in the name of controlling our lives, controlling the temperature, controlling the humidity, all for the comfort of Anthropos. Greetings from Arctic City, but it was not built. Here is a sketch. I don't know if it was done by him. I only like here the blue of the sky. And this is, I don't know if it's him. It looks more like a metabolist work by maybe Kenzo Tange. But I do like what is inside, if he didn't have this thing on top, would have been still a hopeful sign that we can live on Earth. But this protection, so to speak, protection is, I question it. Because yes, the idea was that you wouldn't actually see it, but you wouldn't see it. It's like, you have an enclosure, an invisible enclosure, but it's still an enclosure. You are still trapped within, even if you don't see it. It's about appearance. And this to me doesn't show, somehow it doesn't show the same man from the beginning of his career. And look at I cannot say the poor iceberg because the iceberg is monumental. But I also dislike this, creating a so-called Eden, heaven on earth in a climate which was not meant to have this green there. I'm very sorry. This is not a respect for nature. This is an arrogant display of the human abilities to fool himself that, he is godlike. He is not godlike, and is shown very clearly at Bucha in Ukraine. there is still a beast in the human being and is displayed every day in Ukraine, and not only in Ukraine. It was also displayed in Iraq, wasn't it? So if I look at this picture, you know, whoever made this rendering probably tried to convey the splendor of human life, you know, while outside is the tumultuous, disturbed and potentially disturbing nature, but the human being is in control. Here is an air-conditioned environment where the flowers grow beautifully, and the baby is smiling, if not laughing, and the mother is also happy, and everybody is happy. But look above it is the umbrella of separating us from the world. That's what it is. I don't like this project by Frei Otto. I'm very sorry. Tomorrow it will be your birthday. I wish you happy birthday. I also don't like the work of an architect I admire, and that is Jean Nouvel. What he did for the Louvre. Yes, from the inside, you see the light being filtered poetically, surprisingly, unpredictably, but from the outside, you see what it is about, just like here. It's exactly the same kind of attitude. The human being, godlike, from the conceptual sky of the artist, places this huge thing, this dome, as it is called, above, traps it essentially, a whole human settlement of 40,000 people, and gives them the illusion of having heightened comfort. But I think the true poet would suffocate there and would break the skin and would run away, even if he would run away towards a polar, bear and risk being killed. This is not freedom. Sorry, Frei Otto. And look at him. Look at him. God-like, right? Like a god from above. Mr. Frei Otto, here you are pointing your fingers almost like, Michelangelo's depiction of the birth of Adam is more, in a way, less arrogant. You know, here is, I dislike this optimism, and it didn't work and it doesn't work. But this is what happens with people who achieve, arrive at measurable and legitimate success. And at what point, as it was said, absolute power corrupts absolutely. It happens politically, and it also happens in engineering, and it happens at all levels. It's very hard to remain modest. Compare this dome with his early structures that we saw. It's a different man. It's a different spirit. Sorry, but happy birthday for you tomorrow.